do you want more?
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
Success.
There we go. So I'm getting this thing recorded, but yeah, we're connected. So thank you very much for some time out of your busy schedule, man.
Hey, thanks for having us. I'm humbled and greatly honored. So thank you.
So you got this anthology, Wake the Beast, three CDs, and it's over 2 hours of music. You know, it goes through. I mean, you're more versatile than I think just the novice fan may think. You know, they think neoclassical, but you do the power metal, you do hard rock, you do a little bit of twang. You know, classical guitar in there as well. I mean, how did you go about selecting these tunes, and was it originally going to be like a couple discs and it grew to three, or take us into that?
Sure. Well, it was presented to us by the label and by our manager saying, you know, what would be a really strong collection of approximately 30 songs, right? Since inception. And so, you know, over the years, especially playing a lot of concerts in places like Japan and Europe, you kind of get a sense of what our fans or our followers, what music they really like from us, right? And really those songs that really seem to resonate with our core audience over the years, those are the songs that were selected. And by the time we started playing around with it, we actually pretty easily found 30 songs. So we thought that probably represented the band best, right? We kind of thought that was the best representation of us sonically. And as you said, it is quite diverse, actually.
Yeah, really diverse. In fact, you know, I've been really digging these three tunes. 17th Century Chicken Pickin', which has got that twangy kind of Buck Owens influence. I don't know if that's even the case. Yeah. But then you also have like the Spanish Fire. You know, that's pretty explosive. And then Texas Nuclear, which that almost reminds me of like you maybe digging into some of the boogie, you know, Van Halen-y type of vibe to it. So, you know, pretty eclectic. So I think that's the one thing that I think a lot of people, when they hear your name, they might think neoclassical guy, but it's more diverse than that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, over the years, we got labeled all that silly, you know, the shredding and the neoclassical. Right. Look, the reality is we're a heavy metal band. We always have been. We've been a band made of 4 or 5 individuals, right, that create this music equally. It's like an equal contribution. So it's never been about the neoclassical guitar player. Just, it was part of, you know, my palette, you know, it's part of my playing that I can certainly easily do, but there's so much more to that. There's great riffs, and, you know, we explore various musical territory. And we try to make sure that no matter how heavy we get, because we tend to be a pretty heavy band, that we always have really strong melodic integrity to our vocals, you know, our songs, you know, so I think the body of work does kind of give people that. But I'm so sorry, going back to I was deviating.
Right. Yeah.
But going back to things like Texas Nuclear Boogie, absolutely. I mean, look, I think the band that probably influenced us the most would absolutely be early Van Halen, especially the first record. And so, yeah, when I hear songs like I'm the One, you know, you kind of have that almost like that shuffle feel. Full Bug. I mean, so 17th Century Chicken Pickin' was really meant to kind of complement that, or even early ZZ Top.
Ah, nice.
Even better yet, because that's really where it all comes from. Even Van Halen if Ed was still here, he would have told everybody it's the same thing. It really comes from early Billy Gibbons.
Nice. As far as like, I know, you know, you first were introduced when you released the EP. You know, and I think that definitely generated a lot of buzz and stuff like that. Over the years, I think, you know, that's one of the things where musically, you know, performance-wise, that's kind of held its own. I think the one thing that I always hear about, you know, is the production. You know, is that one of those things that bothers you now, that you didn't have the abilities with today's production abilities to kind of go back in time and you know, make that sound better sonically? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it necessarily myself, because, you know, it is of the time. So therefore, you know, if you listen to a 70s record, it's going to sound like a 70s record, right?
Yeah, but I love that question, and there's a lot of validity to that because if you listen to Impellitteri from Victim of the System on, our
Mhm.
production's massive.
Right.
We're in the biggest studios, we're working with the best engineers, we're using the best equipment. So sonically, we're very fortunate to capture that. The first two records, the Impellitteri Black EP and Stand in Line, were very organic.
Right.
As a matter of fact, Impellitteri Black EP, which is our first recording, the 4-song EP, is actually one of my favorite recordings. And for the reason being is we were poor. We didn't have any money for a big budget album. We had to go into a studio and pretty much put room mics up and play live and capture the band's energy. And I don't know if it was luck, right place, right time, or whatever, but people love that Black EP because they hear it for that. It's almost like you walked into our rehearsal place with an iPhone and just hit record as we're playing, and you can't fake it. It's
Right.
like a live performance, and that's the one thing that to this day we love about that EP. Like songs like Lost in the Rain and Burning. I mean, it's like you're hearing it, it's as if you're with us on stage. We're just going for it. So it's
Right.
not about how big is the bass drum or how big does the bass guitar sound. It's just about here's this band playing live, and you're capturing that experience. So that record, if we did add the big production we had to today and today's standards, right, like we do, I don't know if it would have sounded the same.
Mhm.
you know
Right. Right.
yeah
Yeah, there's something about that era and that time. I mean, you couldn't recapture that anyways if we went back and re-recorded it, you know?
yeah, but you can't, like, I mean, look, if you listen to one of the new Impellitteri records like Venom, I mean, that easily sounds as big as the Black album of Metallica,
Oh, yeah,
right?
for
So
sure.
the Impellitteri Black EP and Stand Line, they're not gonna sonically be able to stand up to that because that's what they weren't designed to do. They were, again, a couple room mics,
Right.
versus here now we have, like, four mics on the kick drum, and we're adding samples and depth and all that stuff. They weren't designed. Even, it's funny, even with Stand in Line, it really was designed to be more like a 70s type,
Mhm.
sonic characteristic, at least what we wanted that record to sound like at that time.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it was made in the 80s, but it was designed really to sound more like in the 70s.
Sure. And then, I remember really discovering you and actually inspired to buy Stand in Line and then went back and grabbed the EP after the fact. But I
Oh,
think
wow.
was because I saw the music video on MTV, for Stand in Line, and it was like, oh, is that Graham Bonnet? Because again, you're like, whoa, he's got Graham Bonnet singing. So take us into
Yeah.
that one, because you almost had like assembled like a super group in a sense for the recording of that record. Obviously, the rhythm section had probably departed by the time the record was released, or at least by the time the video was shot, because you didn't have Chuck and Pat in the band anymore, and you had who'd you have as drummer? Was it Stet? And
That's
then
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Dave.
Stet Howland, and there was Dave Spitz, who had played with Black Sabbath.
Right. So there's a lot of, intertwining there, but take us into that and how you approached Graham about joining the band, because, that's a pretty big move for you.
Yeah, well, we had so much success and excitement around the band when we did the Impellitteri Black EP. I
Mhm.
mean, that thing, it became this really, it was almost like this, we got a cult following around the world with the Black EP.
Yeah.
We were in all the big magazines at the time, like Kerrang magazine. I think that was like the #1 metal magazine. They gave us like the best review. You get like 5 out of 5 stars. They loved it. Japan, the thing blew up. And again, but we're talking about like in a cult following, right? Not like a popularity of like Taylor Swift or
Right.
Katy Perry.
Right.
Wasn't that big, but it was in the metal community, especially in the underground. It was huge, and it set us up. And we went and played some shows. We started to build a really good following in Los Angeles. A lot of people were coming to see us. I think I was a big billboard on Sunset Strip. It was crazy, and so there's a lot of interest in the band. And Rob Rock, he sits us down and says, "Look, love you guys, but I'm going to go to Germany and work with a producer named Dieter Dirks, who was doing the band The Scorpions." And he left the band, and we were like, oh my God, we just got signed to Sony, Relativity, everything is happening for us, and we just lost half the sound of the band, right? And because Rob is a very important part of the sound of our music. So he leaves, and I remember crossing paths with Graham, and Graham and I were friends. And Graham's like, hey, I don't know, something effective, like, what's up? And I'm like, I don't know, dude, I'm kind of bummed. Our singer just quit, And Graham was like, yeah, I just ended Alcatraz. So you kind of knew where this was going, right? And so we're friends. And so we got together. And I remember the first song we sat down and wrote together was the song Stand in Line. And I remember as soon as he opened his mouth, I got chills. I went, oh, this is really unique. Now, there was a challenge because if you listen to the Impellitteri Black EP, people have told me our first record, we sound a bit almost like we're about to be a thrash band with really melodic vocals like Queen and Boston, but with thrash type music, fast double bass drumming, all the crazy fast shredding guitar solos. But we're pretty hardcore metal. With Graham, I wasn't comfortable at that time on that particular record that I could do that with Graham because he was a legend. He was really well known for a certain type of music. So we said, screw it, let's deviate and do more of a tribute to something like Rainbow, which I was uncomfortable with, even though I love Richie Blackmore, big influence, but it was taking me in a different path. Right. So there we had to really say, well, let's do something more organic, more 70s based and do kind of what Graham was known for. And so we started writing all the music in that kind of direction. So that's kind of how Graham ended in it. And I'm actually really glad it happened because, first of all, I've always thought of Graham as a friend. Love the guy. He's just a great human being. But, that record set the stage for what was about to happen in Japan, and other places. We exploded, in a good way. So.
Right. Whose idea was it to bring in the Rainbow cover, do the Since You've Been Gone? Because I think that's
sure.
a brilliant addition because it kind of, at the time modernized that version of it with a little bit more punch.
It wasn't intentional. We were actually short playing time by 2 songs, meaning we were short 2 songs. I'll never forget. I was in the Record Plant, which is a very famous recording studio in Los Angeles. I think everybody from Led Zeppelin to Van Halen, everybody had been in that place at one time. And I was in there with Pat Torpey, God rest his soul, who's no longer with us. Pat was the drummer on Stand in Line. And so Pat and I are in there. And I remember going, shit, I need another song, or actually need another 2 songs. What do we do? And so we first did Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And that was actually, I remember a guy when I was a little kid named Jay Johnson, who was in a band called Crier on the East Coast, did an amazing version of it. And I'd heard Richie Blackmore do it before that. And so we said, well, let's do our own spin, right, of it. And we literally learned the song, arranged it, and did it in about 4 hours. So we tackled the problem. All right, now we have whatever. We're at that 9th song or wherever we were. And then we were like, all right, we need another song, but it has to have Graham's vocal on it. But we don't have a lot of time to write something. Right. Well, why don't we just do a cover of Since You've Been Gone? It was Graham's song anyways, right? Or at least he made it famous. Right. So we literally right on the spot just did it. But on that song, Chuck Wright was doing a different studio session. So a buddy of mine who was the bass player of the band Autograph, his name was Randy Rand, who actually passed recently. Right. Randy actually played bass on that song.
You're kidding. So it's Randy's doing the bass on that
Randy's
song?
playing bass. That's right, from Autograph on Since You've Been Gone. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Over the Rainbow as well. Why do that and not insert like an original instrumental tune in there? But it sounds like you were in a crunch at the time.
We were in a big crunch, and I'm glad we did. I mean, I listened back and look, places like Korea, that version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow is huge. I mean, it's just so popular there. We played a show about a year before the pandemic. We flew to Busan, Korea. We headlined the Busan Rock Festival. And remember, I've told this story about 100 times, but our bass player, James, couldn't go because of visa issues. So my buddy, Rudy Sarzo, who everybody knows, Rudy actually came in, learned all the music, rehearsed with us for like a week or 2 and came with us to Korea and played the show with us. And I remember we went and we walked up on stage and something like 30,000 people, I'm told, came to see us play. And we played Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it's on YouTube, as a matter of fact. So if you ever want to check it out, just put check that out. Yeah, Busan Rock Festival, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it's funny, it looks like some kids in the audience, and he's probably at the front of the stage, so you can't see the audience, but wait until he pans out at the end and you'll see this massive audience, and they are singing every note. Nice. I saw people crying. So I'm forever eternally grateful that we did that version.
Yeah, nice.
Because in Asia, it's expected of us to play it,
Oh, nice. So that's kind of been like part of a staple in the set if you're playing out there.
Yeah. It's taken on a life of its own. I mean, it always was an institutional song. I mean, Somewhere Over the Rainbow is, as a little kid, I watched Wizard of Oz, scared the crap out of me, but That's the theme. Everybody in America knows it. Japan, it's a very popular melody, but for some reason, our version, it resonated with people. You know, I got to be honest, as a guitar player, now that I'm mature and older, right? There's stuff that I love about it, but stuff I don't like about it. You know, like the shredding part, I really like about it because it was unique. We took it in this, that was meant to be like the witch of Wizard of Oz, and playing all the really fast, mean, evil kind of stuff. The thing though, I wish I would have redone now that I'm mature. I wish I would have done the melody with a slide guitar, because the melody happens so quickly and their individual notes, it doesn't really allow you to have a really beautiful, warm vibrato. But with a slide guitar, which I played around with, it actually makes it sound much more musical and, you know, and beautiful. But at the end of the day, you know, can't look back. It was, you know, 30 something years ago. So
sure. I know you mentioned Rob, and he departed, went to work in Germany. I think that's around the time he was working with Axel Rudy Pell or something, right? Was that what he was doing?
No, I think he went, I think the band was called Joshua.
Okay.
And they were signed with RCA, and Dieter Dierks from the Scorpions was producing the record. That's what I remember. But I remember years later, Rob did work with a guy named Axel something. I didn't know the guy, but yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Tell me a little bit about your ongoing working relationship and probably friendship with Rob. I mean, because he's been with you on and off for a bit. I mean, there's been some breaks there, but for the most part, he's been the guy.
Rob and we grew up playing the same type of music in the clubs, meaning like in the bars and the theaters. When we were kids, we were in the same band. We were in a band called Vice together. And so we had to learn other artists' music, early Van Halen, Ozzy, cover music. You know, we played everything. And because we learned from the same sources, when it came time to write our original music, it was really easy because it's almost like we went to the same school and learned the same language. And one thing that's really beneficial for me as an artist, when I write music, I hear Rob's voice in my head singing. So it's interesting. I'll give him the song a lot of times before I say, hey, this is what I was hearing for the vocal melody. And he'll sing it. And it's already what I was hearing him do, because I already kind of know what he's going to do, just the way he is. You know, that gives us an advantage when we write, you know, and I hear it in the music. I mean, when Rob is on these records, not to say that it's not special with Graham as well, it is. Right. But when Rob's on these records, there's just this undeniable chemistry. There's just something very magical about it.
Right.
And we can go into worlds like, you know, you listen to the opening track like Victim of the System, right?
Yeah.
But then you can listen to a song like Forever Yours or On and On, where it's like this beautiful ballad, you know, it's like you go from hardcore speed metal, power metal to ballad. And he and I together can go from extreme different directions.
And it's funny you bring that song up, because I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, is this the right record? You know, not that it was a bad tune, but it was so different from the previous song on that record.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. So just a few more things and then I'll cut you loose. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure talking to you for the first time. Have you ever been approached to do like a guitar oriented type tour, you know, at any point? And would you do it if approached?
The answer is yeah. I have been approached by promoters, and I always said no. You know, look, I mean, the way I play guitar, well, first of all, it's always important. I said this earlier, but I'll repeat it. Okay. So Impellitteri is a heavy metal band, right? Made up of 4 or 5 guys. Now, albeit over the years, we've had some interchangeable members like drummers, right? But for the most part, James, Rob, I mean, it's been the nucleus, same guys, you know, who are equally responsible. So if you like us, it's not just Chris Impellitteri, the shredding guitar player, the technical guitar player. It's you must like Rob, or you must like James, or you must like the drummer, right? And so I've always strayed away from any offers that, hey, come out and do like like an instrumental guitar tour, like a G3 or anything like that. That's just not, I wouldn't be interested in that. And I love those guitar players. I don't even think of being negative towards them. I love them. But it's not something I'm interested in. And plus the way I play, I mean, look, even I acknowledge, yes, I play fast quite often. There's a lot of notes and a lot of musical information being thrown at the audience. I don't want our audience to have to listen to 4 bands doing that all night. I mean, that's a bottle of Tylenol waiting to happen. You know, it's like, I would rather have a band that sounds completely different than us, you know, maybe have like a thrash band, like an Anthrax or whatever, play with us. And then we do our thing. So this way you get a nice, diverse evening of great music. So hence, that's why I've always stayed away from that particular kind of thing.
Right. I know, have you ever been approached about joining an already established band?
Yeah.
And what did you have to think about it, or was it an absolute no right from the get-go?
Well, I mean, I could be careful. I don't want to say names because last time I did it, I think it ended up on like Blabbermouth or one of those places.
Right.
I've been called by some of the biggies,
Okay.
right, to play guitar for them. And you know, it's for me. Look, I mean, I got into the music industry and I started playing guitar because it was an extension of my voice. It allowed me to express my internal feelings, my emotions, right, through music. And when I started Impellitteri with Rob, I vowed that I would stay loyal to it till the end, you know, and I've kept my word, you know. And so there have been times, yeah, absolutely, that I've had offers from much bigger bands than we
Right.
are, right? And it's tempting. You go, oh, but at the same time, I also, and I did state this, would I be happy? Because really what you do when you're joining an established band, you have to learn all their music. And now you're almost in essence, you're like a cover guy, right? It's not your music, and it won't happen until you get to, you know, create new music with them, right? So when I go out and I play with Impellitteri, there's this utility, this internal reward that when I'm playing that music, it's music we created. You know, I'm not playing covers of someone else. So, you know.
I need to ask you about this because I've seen it in many photos. It's that white Strat with that red paint dripping down. It almost looks like you bludgeoned somebody with the guitar and stuff. Don't take offense to this. Not the prettiest of guitars, but
Yeah.
what's the significance behind or story behind that guitar? Because it's got to have some kind of sentimental or some kind of value to it. You know that you have used it so often in photo shoots.
Yeah, and live and on record. So the story actually this. So I have a friend that he is an artist rep for Charvel guitars. And for people, the kids that don't know Charvel really, it was made famous by Eddie Van Halen. That first guitar, it was like a Charvel neck with a boogie body, you know, the one with the red and white, but you know, stripes, all that. So it kind of put that on the map. So what happened was, I think the artist rep kept calling me and he kept saying, dude, there's this guitar I want you to play. It's in our warehouse. It's been sitting there since 2007. And it was a guitar that was handmade by Grover Jackson, Mike Charvel, I'm sorry, Mike Shannon, Grover Jackson, and I forget the other one, but it's the original builders of Charvel in the 70s made this guitar. And they went to sell these guitars. I don't remember. It must have been in the year 2007, but they were ridiculously expensive. They were going to be like $16,000 to $20,000, right? Each guitar. So they couldn't sell them. They were too expensive. So this guitar sat in a warehouse. And my buddy Mike, who was the rep, he kept calling me, goes, dude, you got to come out and play this. So one day I'm like, all right, whatever. Because he showed me a picture of it, sent me like a text with a picture. I'm like, dude, no. I said, I want to play the guitar, but it looks like blood's all over. I'm like, no way. So anyways, I went down to the Charvel artist, you know, place. And I went down, he brings the guitar out. And I'm like, okay. And he opens the case. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool looking. And then as soon as I picked it up and started playing, I went, oh my God, this is like one of the best guitars I've ever played. It sounds so great. And then I plugged into one of Ed Van Halen's EVH heads because he had it down there, right? And it sounded even better. And it was like, oh no. I was like, all right, I guess I'm going home with this. So he basically gave me the guitar. I went home and then I started recording some music with it, right? I think on Nature of the Beast, we actually did a lot of that record with that guitar. Even on the new record, it's all over the new record. It sounds great. So that's why that guitar entered my life.
Okay, got it. A couple more things and then I'll cut you loose. Animental USA, how'd you get involved with that? I know you mentioned Rudy Sarzo. He was part of that as well. Give us a little bit of backstory on that.
Yeah, so I was called by Sony Music. And Sony Music actually assembled that band, hand selected everybody. I think first it was Rudy Sarzo. And Rudy's always been a great friend of mine, but Rudy's also a big fan of anime, right? So he was very, very well versed with anime. And anime is quite different than what people think in Japan versus what they think of it in America, right? I mean, so they selected Rudy. Then I believe they brought in Scott Travis, who's the current drummer of Judas Priest, Mike Viscera, who had sang at one time with a very famous Japanese metal band called Loudness. And then they were looking for a guitar player, and I don't know why, but they selected me over all of their other people. So they brought me in, and I remember Marty Friedman, who had played with Megadeth, he wrote a lot of that music, arranged a lot of it, so I had to learn a lot of it. which was, again, almost going on, here we go, I'm learning someone else's stuff, right?
Right.
But they allowed me to write, my own stuff and do all of my own solos and create everything. I went, okay, this is kind of fun. And, we did it, and instantaneously in Japan, it was pretty big. I mean, we were on the equivalent of, like, in America, there are TV shows like Good Morning America, which reach tens of millions of people. We were on those type of TV shows, not only in the morning, but at night. Our first show we played in Japan, it was 18,000 people, with Animetal. I mean, it was just crazy, and it was really fun. We did 2 records. I think we spent about 3.5, almost 4 years of our life together constantly.
Yeah.
Me and Rudy and Mike, and originally, what's his name? Scott did the record, but didn't do the tour. We brought in John Detty, who had played with Slayer. Right. John actually did the tour and then the second record. And, it was like we were living together constantly, 24/7 in studios, rehearsal studios, concerts, live performance on jets, flying across the ocean, hotel rooms. So It was a great time, but it ran its course because they were really trying to bring it to America. Mm-hmm. And I knew it wasn't going to take off here, because what happened is, we played some big venues, arenas and stuff like that in Japan. But when we came to Los Angeles, they brought us to Los Angeles, California, to the convention center. And there were about 100,000 people for this big anime convention. And it was crazy. We went in there and we did all the autographs and the signing. But that night, when I say that night, they had us play at 5 o'clock, actually, not night, 5 o'clock, like dinner time, at the Los Angeles Convention Center, which held about 5,000 people. And, everybody's saying, oh, this is going to be big in America. And the whole time I'm thinking, no, I don't think the Americans are going to understand this music. Mm-hmm. And I was right. I mean, we got up on stage. Remember, this place holds about 5,000 people. I'd be shocked if there were 300 people.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we played, and it was great. We had the time of our life, and all the media people that needed to do their thing but I could just tell America was not going to embrace it. And, they were paying us a lot of money, to be honest. So I didn't think they were going to go much further. So we finished the second record. We did a tour with Japan, and then that was it. And I left. I left it and said, thanks, guys, but I'm going back to Impellitteri.
Nice. All right. Couple more. I keep adding more, but 2 more.
It's okay. I'm game. I got time.
Have you ever met one of your heroes, and what was that experience like? And what did you take away from that experience when meeting your fans?
Well, I've met so many artists, that inspired me, right? So when you're a kid, you're inspired by other artists, right? So, well, it's funny talking about Rudy. That's a great example. I was thinking about this when we did that headlining show in Korea, and Rudy played with us. Mm-hmm. I saw Rudy play with Randy Rhoads. I saw him play actually a couple times with Ozzy. I saw him with Randy Rhoads. I think that might have been at the Providence Civic Center in Providence, Rhode Island. And I saw Rudy play with Quiet Riot when they were at their peak, just exploding. And I remember we're playing that festival, we're headlining. And I remember looking over my right shoulder and thinking, wow, if the little 13-year-old kid that went and saw Rudy and Randy play would know that Rudy's now on stage playing with me, playing Impellitteri music in front of 30,000 people, right, I wouldn't have believed it. I'd be like, come on, no way. It was just awesome. That was one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is really cool. Now, Rudy's my bud. We're friends anyway. So, right. But it was very like, oh, awesome. Yeah. As far as celebrities, here's a story. When we were doing the Impellitteri Black EP, mm-hmm. we were at Baby O recording studios, and I'll never forget, we were using an engineer named Mikey Davis. Okay. So Mikey was tracking us live, but at the same time, we go, hey, hold on, guys, I got to run across the hall, which is about 20 feet over. He was also working with Gene Simmons of Kiss, doing Kiss demos. And I'll never forget, Gene came in and he introduced himself. Now, I don't know if he'd remember this, but he came in, introduced himself, and I think he heard me shredding. I was doing all the crazy stuff, right? And I think he said something effective, don't you know any Clapton? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, like dun 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 dun. And he goes, come here. And he walks over behind me, reaches around because I had my guitar on, and he starts playing my guitar over my shoulders, going dun 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 dun. And I'm thinking, wow, now that's another cool one, because when I was 12 years old, Kiss was my first concert.
Right.
So here I am, like, oh, well, I saw you play the Destroyer tour, Rock and Roll Over, Love Gun tour, all stuff. And here the dude is reaching over my back, playing a Clapton riff on my guitar. I'm thinking, all right, this is cool. So I've had many of those moments. Our first show we played in Japan, We played the Tokyo Dome. It was in front of 65,000 people. It was Graham Bonnet for standing in line, but it was a festival. And one artist that really ended up gravitating towards us, he really ended up liking us. I know he complimented me a lot on the guitar playing stuff, was Billy Joel.
Oh,
and
wow.
we ended up hanging out with Billy for like a week. And, so in my career, yes, of course, I've met a lot of people. I've had a lot of rock stars, mega rock stars here at the house I'm sitting here talking to you in, right? So, I got to play with some people, playing with Scott. He was he still was in Priest. That was pretty cool.
Right.
I've played with a lot of very well-known people, or I've been in the studio with them or whatever, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there a particular artist that maybe the world isn't necessarily aware of that's really blown you away that you'd say, hey, that person's got it?
Oh yeah. There's a guitar player named Jimmy Bell. He's quite a bit older than me, but he was really one of my inspirations on playing fast, right? Like I was always into Al Di Meola and Paco de Lucia and John McLaughlin, guys like that. But Jimmy Bell was like this unknown rock guitar hero in Connecticut in the New England scene, right? And just to this day, still an amazing guitar player. And he was a big inspiration because, when I wanted to learn like how does Di Meola do it or McLaughlin, those guys, we didn't have YouTube. You had to, if you're lucky, go see them in concert. But, Jimmy was in a bar band, so I could go watch him sneak into the clubs and play. And he was one of those guys, he just had it. And he almost got the Ozzy gig before Zakk Wylde. Yeah, so he was an amazing player. So he's one of those players for certain.
Okay. Last thing, and this is a big one. What's one piece of advice that you'd give a new up-and-coming artist so they can have the period of longevity that you've had?
Find your own voice.
Nice.
I will say after all these years, it's taken me a while, but I found out who I really was as an artist. I think I found it with the Impellitteri Black EP. But over the years, I've really realized the most important part is to make certain that you find your original voice, right? Because there's plenty of times where I said, hey, am I playing too much like Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, Yngwie, Al Di Meola, whatever? So I found ultimately, and I can't help it, I'm a sponge. I absorbed a lot of all these different players and which influenced me. And eventually, as a creative, as an artist, right? All of that helped kind of mold who I became. But once I became that, now when I'm writing music, I just write the way I want to write. I don't write to sound like someone else. Right. When I'm playing a solo, I play the solo the way I want. I'm not playing it to mimic someone. So people say, oh, he's as good as that guy. No, I just do it myself. And if it works and they love me and they embrace it, then so be it. But I think that's the most important thing is when you pick up that instrument, be true to yourself, play the music that you love, write the music you love, and play the way you want to play.
Right.
Got
it. Hey, man, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure. Hopefully we can do it again some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's my pleasure and honor. So thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll get you guys links and everything, and best with the anthology. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah. I like it very much too. Especially, the first two songs come out swinging. So if you don't like it after the first two songs, you probably won't like it.
Right. That sets the tone for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day.
All right, you as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.